Great, we're good.
There we go. Okay, well, it is Monday, February 9th, 5:30 PM, and I will call this Joint Animal Services Commission a regular meeting to order. Tonight we have our newest member. In fact, if you guys would like, we can do introductions. I don't see any problem with that. If you guys don't mind, let's start here.
Here. Joe McGuckin, P-Line Friends.
Vicky Smith, Deschutes Animal Clinic.
Brandon Whedon, council member at the City of Tumwater.
Kelly Green, City of Olympia Council.
Malcolm Miller, City of Lacey Deputy Mayor.
Sarah Hawk, Executive Director for Joint Animal Services.
Shannon Kelly Fong, Assistant City Manager for the City of Lacey.
And those online.
Emily Klaus, Thurston County Commissioner. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Commissioner Klaus's executive aide.
Thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion for approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda items.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about tonight's agenda items or consent agenda items? Seeing none, all in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. And the first item of business on our agenda tonight is election of officers. We will be electing a chair and a vice chair tonight.
Chair, we do have public comment, but
Did I
I
skip
don't
public
believe
comment?
anybody has signed up and there's nobody in the council chambers.
Okay, well, I just apparently like to get right to business. Is there anyone
Makes public comment.
wanting to address this commission tonight? Either online or in person? Seeing none,
We had no written public comment.
nothing to add to the record. Now we can move on to our first business item, which is the election of officers. Our first office to be elected is for chair. Does anybody want to make a nomination? Well, I guess we don't really need to formulate it. Open nominations. I guess I could. Nominations now open.
I would nominate Malcolm Miller to stay as chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been nominated and seconded. Is there any discussion before we move on with this nomination?
Do you have to accept it? Or do you just-
I will accept said nomination.
And just typically, just see if there's a call for any other nominations and then you can take a vote.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. Is there a call for any other nominations? Seeing none, all in favor of said nomination, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes and I will remain chair for another year. Okay, we are in need of a vice chair. And so I will open the nominations for a vice chair. Is this her? I'll wait till we get to discussion. Is there any nominations for a vice chair? Okay.
I'd nominate Kelly Green, council members.
I will second that nomination. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of nominating or making Kelly Green our vice chair, please say aye.
Sure, you do have a question.
Do I have a question? Oh, Commissioner Klaus.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna nominate myself to stay as vice chair.
Oh. Anybody want a second?
What happens if we have two motions in a second?
So you don't, for nominations, you don't require a second, it's just a nomination, but now that you have two nominations, what you would do is you would take the first nomination and do a vote. And if that vote is successful, that would be your vice chair. So that means getting the majority, and if not, you would move on to the second nomination and do the vote, and you may need to continue beyond that depending on the outcome.
That is awesome. So for our first nomination of vice chair for Ms. Kelly Green, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair, if I, oh, sorry, go ahead. For just
Oh,
from the
for-
clerk, if we could raise hands too, just so that she can hear.
Okay.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, I'll go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No.
I'll vote for Kelly. I'll withdraw my nomination.
So it looks like we have a unanimous vote for Ms. Green.
Yes.
Then we have a chair and a vice chair. Next on our agenda tonight is our 2025 in review. Executive Director Sarah Hawk.
Right, so 2025 was, if y'all recall, a very busy, but lot of really great things happened in 2025. So we're going to talk about everything that the team has accomplished and some of our successes along with year-end stats to give everybody an update of where we finished off the year. So we had some state and national board appointments. So both Becca Cry, our positive outcomes coordinator, and Sierra Tees, our field manager, were both elected to the Washington Animal Care and Control Board, as well as being elected to the Washington Animal Fighting Task Force. I was elected to the Association of Animal Welfare Advancement, which is a national board. And so we're really excited to be seeing these board appointments, and it's really neat to see the staff, especially Becca and Sierra, so active statewide.
That's a 12-member board,
The WACA board is
the Association for Animal Welfare.
Association for Animal Welfare is a 12-member board, yeah,
So you're one of 12 out of 50 states.
correct.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you. We also had a really great legislative year. So if you recall, we HB 1149 passed, which was an update to our cruelty RCWs that closed a lot of loopholes, including convicted felons who were convicted of animal fighting being able to still own animals. The House Bill 1201 makes it mandatory to identify emergency accommodations in emergency and extreme weather events that are co-sheltering. So either a place where you can go and be sheltered with your pet, or in tandem have identified a place for your pets to go so that you can also seek shelter. House Bill 1046 was rescue of vulnerable people and pets from motor vehicles. So giving Good Samaritans as well as law enforcement and animal control officers the ability to break into a car if a person or animal is in distress, suffering from cold or heat stroke. And then Senate Bill 5065 was prohibiting traveling animal acts in the state of Washington. So it was a really great year in 2025. We'll talk a little bit about 26 in the director's report. Joint Animal Services was also awarded $1 million of state funding to go towards the architectural designs of a new facility with the direct support from the 22nd Legislative District, but also it was several of our legislative districts that really supported that. So we had Representative Dolio and Representative Parsley, along with several others who were sponsors of this regional bill. We had some really great innovative program creation. Becca and Sierra and Megan created our animal cruelty volunteer response team. So they developed that from start to finish. As the commission has noticed, when we have our large scale cruelty cases, it is an all staff event, which normally means that we have to shut the entire shelter down in order to do a large scale cruelty case. But now that we have our response team, what we activate is a group of volunteers and fosters that have had background checks and are specially trained to come on site as well as be on the shelter with us to help bring those animals back, process them with photos, and help us recruit for foster placement. And the foster placement knows of these animals' special needs because of the circumstances that they come from. So this is really great. And the other part of this is Becca and Sierra have actually been asked to go speak at 2 conferences to talk about the creation of their program. So they will be speaking at the Best Friends National Conference in May. And they will also be speaking at Texas Unites, which is a Texas regional, but it's also more like Southern regional animal welfare conference. So very exciting. We also have our volunteer behavior enrichment program. So that was created, job description and a whole program in place for volunteers can literally just pick up the manual and start making behavior enrichment to distribute to the animals. Behavior enrichment helps keep the animals mentally healthy and active during their time with us. It helps relieve stress. And it's a great activity, especially for group activities as well, for groups to come in and make these behavior enrichment toys to give to the animals. We also formed a volunteer-led play group. So we sent several of our volunteers to Dogs Playing for Life. They were at Skagit Valley Humane Society this year, I should say last year. And so we sent several of our volunteers that were interested, and they came back with the idea that they wanted to start doing play groups themselves after receiving this training. So with consulting with Becca and Megan, our positive outcomes coordinator and our volunteer and outreach coordinator, they have now formed a program where they come in at least once a week and do play groups. And what's really great about play groups is it allows for more natural behavior assessments of the dogs. So it's not a false behavior assessment where like you're sticking a fake hand in their food and seeing if you can get a reaction. You're seeing how these dogs interact with each other. Do they do well on leash? Can they be introduced? What is their play style? Are they rough players? You know, do they get along in bigger groups, and what does that look like? Plus, it's really great stress relief. And again, another way to mentally stimulate the dogs in our care. And we also get some really great video footage for our social media while it's happening too. So it's a win-win for everybody. We had a fantastic year when it came to volunteers. So last year we had just under 6,000 volunteer hours. This year, we more than doubled those hours. We more than doubled the amount of volunteers. So we had about 125 to 150 volunteers in 2004, and we finished 2005 with 248. And then doubling our volunteer hours that are given. Some of this were changes that we made. Some different recruitment styles, looking in different places, and a lot of these hours we can contribute, especially during the summer, to our youth volunteers. They were very, very heavily active this summer, and we were actually really sad to see them go come like fall when school kicked back in. We were used to seeing them come, and they would come in pairs and, you know, spend a couple of hours doing cat adoptions and doing laundry and all of these great things around the shelter. So that's part of what contributed to these hours. We also did 30 outreach events. Last year we did 22. So again, we continue to increase. We're doing more than every other week at this point. This includes our partnership with Timberland Library for both Lacey Timberland Library and Yelp Timberland Library, where we do the Animal Allies Club once a month.
How many volunteers did you say were for 24?
About 125.
Sure, I know sometimes when you see numbers like almost 14,000, it's hard to think about what that equates to. Can you tell us in terms of FTEs, how many folks that is?
I have to do math. Hold on, guys.
Right, I've already done it.
Well, why don't you help a girl out, Shannon?
So it's 6.6. So,
Well,
I mean, just think about the impact that volunteers has on the operations of animal services. You want to talk more about
So
that?
that equates to, we have 22 staff. So if you think about it, would be the equivalent of a third of our staff.
and what's the average pay scale for a staff member?
Average pay scale for a staff member, oh gosh, we could go with 24 an hour, but I believe the national volunteer Nonprofit estimates Washington volunteers to be at $40 an hour because that includes benefits.
It's a big chunk.
So that's a huge amount of savings. And the only reason why we are able to do what we do is because of the volunteers that help with that. You know, when you think in terms of, we had over 4,000 animals last year, and we'll get into that exact number a little bit further in the presentation. But I only have 4 animal care techs to over 4,000 animals. And so what this means is I have volunteers every single day cleaning cat adoption, cleaning cat stray, helping to clean dog adoption, helping to clean dog stray they're walking the dogs so that the staff can clean those kennels and have the animals out. So we have volunteers starting from 8 a.m. when we first get there until we close at 5 p.m. And they're doing everything from laundry, data entry, physical labor stuff. They're going out to events with us. In some instances, they're doing the events for us because we don't have the bandwidth to do 30. So these are volunteers that are representing us in the community. And like I said, these are volunteers that are now accompanying us on large scale cruelty cases that are, you know, helping us load animals up and document. And so really they are the heart of everything that we do. And we could not do any what we do without them. It would look like a much different shelter. That it allows us to do the programs that we do. Our veterinary team, again, our small but mighty team of 3 is killing it. They did over 3,800 exams on animals last year. And that was an over 35% increase in exams over the year prior. November was their busiest month with 434 exams, which is a 52% increase over that same time last year, our busiest month. And we had 3 months where we exceeded over 400 exams compared to just 1 month being 400 exams in 2024. So it was a busy, busy year. And it definitely showed in everything that we did, including veterinary. So we did a total of 1,868 total procedures. That's almost a 46% increase over the year prior. 226 of those were other procedures. So that would be like eye enucleations, dentals, a leg amputation, tail amputation, a hernia repair, things like that. But we did 1,624 spay-neuter surgeries. So they were absolutely rocking it. August, we saw 100% increase in the amount of procedures that we did. This also, like, we have to say, like, this wasn't just our small but mighty team. As I talked about last year, we had to bring in relief veterinary staff to help accommodate the amount of surgeries that we were doing because it's not our one full-time veterinarian cannot handle that full load. So partnership was in success with South Sound Veterinary Connection. We also had relief vets, and then Pinehurst Veterinary Clinic actually did some free spay-neuter surgeries for us because they had students. So that was really great. And you can see the breakdown of surgeries here. So we did 1,272 cat spay-neuters, 506 dog spay-neuters, 76 specialties and dentals, and then 6 rabbit spay-neuters. And while that doesn't seem like a lot, rabbit spay-neuters are a big deal, and they take a lot of time, and they're very fragile patients. So. And speaking of that, so I'm doing a little things differently. I don't have a happy tales for my director's report, but that's because they're scattered throughout the whole 2025 review. So this is Meredith. Meredith came to the shelter after being hit by a car. The team amputated her dislocated tail as well as they repaired a fracture with 2 separate procedures. And so a friend of her foster family adopted her, and that's her doing amazing, just hanging out, sleeping in her cute little kitty bed. And so this was a great example of the veterinary team and then our positive outcomes coordinator, Becca, coordinating to find a foster home and medical care so that we did not have to euthanize Meredith instead of being able to do these extra surgeries. Some foster data for you. So this year we did 152 dogs and puppies in foster, and then 462 cats and kittens. Dogs, this was a huge increase over the year prior. We had a 63% increase in fosters, but we also saw a huge overall increase in fosters as well. With 2024, we saw 427 animals were placed into foster, and in 2025, 614 placed into foster. And so this also helps as we talk about our capacity and the amount of animals that we can have in the shelter. Foster homes really expand our capacity in what we're able to do. They help with neonate kittens, orphaned kittens, pregnant moms, nursing moms, underage puppies, anybody who's sick, needs a little bit of extra care, and then of course, anybody who needs to recover from surgery. Speaking of another happy tale, we're gonna talk about Littlefoot, who's now Leon. Littlefoot arrived extremely emaciated, unable to walk without assistance, and had painful leg sores. So with the work of our veterinary team and foster team, which included a lot of intensive care, we were able to get him stable and putting on about 11 pounds before he caught the eye of the executive director for Whatcom Humane Society. And she just fell in love with Littlefoot, came and got him, called him Leon, and in her care, he's put on a total of 40 pounds. And so you can see the difference. He lives his happy life up in Whatcom County. He goes to doggy daycare and has 2 gray pitty girlfriends that he hangs out with, and then also comes to work with his mom. That's him at work with his, like he's sitting in his mom's office in his PJs. Now we're gonna move on to some statistics. So shelter intake, this is the full year at a monthly glance. You can see in December, we started going down a little bit, which is nice. And just as a reminder, some of these spikes that you see, especially in February, was our 500 plus cockfighting case that we did in conjunction with TCSO. This is the breakdown per species. So you can see we had a 26% increase in cat intake last year. We ended up evening out. So I know there was about 8 months into the year, dog intake was actually about 30 to 40% more than what we were normally seeing. And by the end of the year, things thankfully evened out, but there was definitely a few months there where we had some extremely high numbers. But as you can see across the board, all 2025 numbers are in red. We were over in almost every section. How that breaks down, so Thurston County was responsible for about 57% of our intake, then Olympia at 21, Lacey at 15, and Tumwater at 7. We saw an overall increase in intake of 27.5%. With total animals, oh gosh, it's hidden right underneath there, of 4,212 animals. Yes.
Off the top of my head, those percentages seem like they align pretty closely with our ILA breakdown.
They
Is that?
do. So both our intake as well as field services do actually match up with, and probably like give or take some percentages, but they do align pretty well with the per capita assessment. Positive outcomes, one of the good things, at least that we see with an increase in intake is there was an increase in our positive outcomes as well. So we finished off the year with 1,682 adoptions, which is fantastic. We had the highest number we've seen in transfers since pre-COVID. So 541 transfers. Those transfers went to other shelters and rescues who had space to pull animals from us. RTO is up slightly, even though it stays pretty static. We did finish off the year higher than 2024, which is fantastic at 390 animals returned to their owner. And then our community cat program has seen its best year yet. So year over year, we keep increasing and finished off the year with 373 cats that were a part of our community cat program.
So the return to owner is it $25?
The initial fee is 35 and then 15 per day after the initial fee. Euthanasia, we did have a large number of euthanasias, more so than we have. But again, I do want to point out, like I said, I think it was in April when I said this year will always be the asterisk mark because of that cockfighting case. So, you know, the majority increase in our euthanasias come from that cockfighting case. And you can see where it's broken down, where we have cats are blue, dogs are red, and then other is gray. And so that was the number, the majority of those were the roosters from the cockfighting case. Again, this is just to look at it a little bit differently, with the blue being owner requested euthanasias. So members of the community who are coming to us to ask for euthanasia because they cannot afford euthanasia at a vet clinic, compared to red, which is our shelter euthanasia. But again, it is so much larger because of the cockfighting case. So hopefully this is our asterisk in, you know, in our data, and we won't continue to see a high number like that. But again, I want to be transparent in all of our numbers, not just in the positive things that happen at the shelter.
On the previous slide,
Yes.
it looks like we're going up on an annual basis, but that rise could also be commensurate with our population growth
Mhm.
For the county. So, because I know it kind of looks like, oh,
Right, it does look like more, and every year it's going to shift, right? It's also dependent on, again, our positive outcomes. So like we could have a year where the other shelters and rescues are not taking as many animals. It depends on the type of animals coming in. We had a lot more field cases this year as well, and that could be tied into our larger number of euthanasias, because there were some animals in these instances that euthanasia was the best outcome for that. Field calls, so this is it laid out month by month, red being 2025. So again, just across the board, 2025 had a larger call volume. That broke down into, so you can see total field calls. We finished off the year just under 3,400 field calls. It was a total increase across the board of 12%, just overall field calls for all the jurisdictions that we served. And then this is a breakdown of what that looks like. Again, Thurston County at 44. Olympia, you're hidden there, but I want to say it's in the 20-something percent. I just can't see it. 24, thank you. 22 for Lacey and 10 for Tumwater. And then I broke down the percentages of what the increase was per jurisdiction. So for a while, Olympia was riding at a decrease. Your hands raised.
Will you finish your
Okay.
statement?
But you guys finished just not quite over a percentage more over 2024. And then Lacey saw a 12% increase in field calls. Tumwater was over 27%. And Thurston County saw a 14% increase in field calls.
If you can go back to the prior slide. What constitutes a field call? And the reason I ask is, like, in a 365-day year, That's a whole lot of calls every single day, like,
It is.
math is mind boggling.
Yeah, so I mean, don't get me wrong, some of these do include easy nuisance issues like
Mm.
barking, right? Or even just a nuisance issue like my neighbor's dog is on my property again and again.
So they don't require a response. It's literally the call.
Sometimes they all get a response of some sort, whether it's an officer calling to talk through it more or a visit. And these are all outcomed calls. So it's not just somebody calling. This is literally like, these are outcomed calls that we've done. And so, yeah, like it does cross the gamut. I would say probably 50% of those calls are stray pickups, like there is a dog at large and it's us coming out to collect a stray dog. Bites and menacing are usually following that. And those do require a lot of, it's not just a one and done. So for example, if a dog bites either another animal or a person, that's just not a single call. It's us going out. Could be us going out multiple times, multiple phone calls, collecting all of those emails, compiling the report to do an assessment, issuing a bite quarantine. So a lot of these, a single call could easily be remedied with a quick call to see what's going on. Here's some solutions, here's some first steps, barking complaint that, might take maybe an hour or two, depending, right? All the way up to, you could have an officer spending upwards of 8 to 15 hours on a single call, depending on what it is, who's involved, how many community members are involved. So in 2025, we had 18 prosecutorial referrals. The majority of these were actual neglect, so misdemeanor and felony level neglect and cruelty cases. This was some of the higher ones that we have seen this year. We had 268 animals seized. That means through a warrant. So that doesn't necessarily include all of the roosters from the cockfighting case, because when we seized 60 in the original as part of our warrant, the rest were surrendered to us as condition on release. So that does not constitute in this animal seized, but we seized through a warrant 268 animals this year. So I kept referring to the cockfighting case. Here's a sum up again. This was one of the largest cockfighting cases in Washington state history. There were over 500 chickens, over 300 of which were roosters. We coordinated a multi-agency response. It wasn't just TCSO. We had Pierce County and King County. Several of the cities gave animal control officers or law enforcement, or some of the counties did as well. It was used as a learning exercise for some of the detectives and law enforcement to learn more about animal crimes and animal fighting. And it was a coordinated all-day 15-hour response. This was before the creation of our animal cruelty response team. So this was, for an example, a day that we shut down and the majority of the staff was on site for 15 hours.
Where's that again?
Out in Yelm-ish area, technically unincorporated Thurston County.
And how did we get the tip?
A volunteer with another rescue group was concerned about an emaciated horse that she saw. And so she had observed and taken photographs of the horse. And when she submitted those and the horse, we saw the, what you see up here, the A-frames, and then there's barrels, which is again, consistent housing with cockfighting. We could actually see those in the distance. And so the detective from TCSO that was working the livestock portion of that case contacted us because of the cockfighting portion. And so that's how it was originally discovered. This is still an ongoing case. It's still currently in the court system. So we don't have an outcome per se yet of what this is going to look like, but they were given 300 counts of felony level animal fighting. So we'll see where that. We also had the Beach Hamilton case. A lot of you might have read about it in the Olympian. This was another coordinated response with Thurston County Sheriff's Office out in unincorporated Thurston County. There was a lot more animals on site, but we were responsible for the 16 dogs and 8 cats that we seized off of that property. But as you can see, it was on the bottom photo where the tent structures were, that is where several little dogs were being kept in crates stacked. And then the other is a photograph from inside the house where livestock was being kept. And so Thurston County Sheriff's Office handled the livestock portion of that while we handled the dog portion. And this is
I just
also an
assumed that was
ongoing
gravel,
case.
that's carpet.
No, I don't think that's carpet.
That's poop.
Oh, God. That's crazy. Let's just move on.
I will say that this was the first case that we did utilize our animal cruelty response team. And so that did work out with being able to have our volunteers help load up. They were taking photographs. So you can see in the bottom photo, we had groups of 3 set up, stationed, and they were part of sections as we processed. And so we had 1 volunteer taking photographs and 1 volunteer writing on the whiteboard, and then it was the staff member that handled the animal.
People lived in there?
Yes. So it was very sad conditions that day. Another one of our happy tales is Burfie. Burfie was from one of our other cruelty cases, and she was seized last year. She was unfortunately experienced severe physical trauma. It almost cost her her life. And so you can see this round picture was a before picture, and then the square one is her after. So once we obtained legal custody of Burfie, she was transferred to a rescue organization that found her an adoptive home. And so she was one that was in our foster care with one of our specialty fosters from our animal cruelty response team as well.
Are those her ears or little rubber banded tufts up there?
Those are little tufts to keep the hair out of her face. Her little ears are like over here. You just can't see, they're like hidden, but no, those are her cute little pom-pom hair.
Looks like she's got Eeyore with her. Her little pet. Winnie the Pooh.
And then we're finishing off. I asked the team to send me photos of some of their most memorable animals from 2025, their favorites. And so we're finishing off with a collection of some of the animals that came through the shelter in 2025.
All right. Well, we figured that. See what's our next agenda item.
I think I'm technically supposed to give you guys some statistics first before I move on to the
Please.
director's report.
Please do.
Nope, wrong one. Nope, that's the right one. All right, this is gonna be really quick, I swear, because we only have January to talk about.
Hey.
So these are just year to date through January. It's only 1 month, so we don't have a lot of comparative data. So please, take everything with a grain of salt. We're down intakes from last year. It's not by a ton, but I'll take what we can get. So currently January was still higher than 2024, but obviously less than 2025. So It's looking good. We're, 2026 is the gray in this, so as you can see, just across the board, we're low in dogs, cats. Other, which is our
Guinea pig.
guinea pigs, snakes, tortoises.
Is this the right
Birds.
before the storm? Maybe.
We'll see.
Mm.
You know, I know, I'm trying not to jinx this by, we're still staying pretty on par. Thurston County is at 48% currently. Olympia at 23, Lacey at 18, and Tumwater at 11. Positive outcomes. So, again, intakes down. Some of that's going to be down too. It is a slower month. We had 99 adoptions in January, 27 transfers, and 47 returned to owners. Field calls, we're seeing a little less there too, so more than 2024, but less than 25. And again, we're holding actually right on our assessment for this month, matching our field calls. So pretty dead on with those percentages, but still seeing an increase across the board in those calls comparatively, so. Not, not a huge, but still wanted to share those statistics. We'll see a little bit more in our April meeting when we have 3 months of data.
So 2025 was pretty robust.
It was.
Okay, let's move on to the director's report. I guess it would be kind to ask if anybody had any questions or concerns or wanted to share anything about that last report. All right.
All right, so just a couple of January activities. Sierra and I attended the first meeting of the National Animal Cruelty Task Force. We were a part of the study that was conducted last year. And so now they hold monthly meetings to talk about how we can standardize things across the country, learn from each other, have a resource to reach out with each other with cases when we have questions or concerns. We also, Megan went to McLean Elementary School and presented to roughly 50 first graders. But had a really great, they did a really great project in school was the kids made these kennel signs for all the animals that were available for adoption. So this was a photograph of one of those examples. And we had 115 active volunteers contribute to over 1,200 service hours for January.
Just wanna highlight that the jukebox hero here will make a groovy friend. It's great.
Which one's Jukebox Hero?
That would be this doggy right here. That's his name is Jukebox Hero.
Really?
We have fun naming.
We'll have a song.
It sure was. And, 2025 was a pretty great year for us not having to do maintenance. And so I'm going to start us off with the HVAC cooler, the HVAC system that is directly cooling cat stray isolation as well as our RT room will need to be replaced. So it is currently, we're estimating around $7,000. That is built into our budget, but it does take up a portion of our budget that we already use for maintenance, repair, and replacement. So just keeping in mind with a repair this early on, potentially, depending on how this year goes with the building, we may bring forth a budget amendment for additional maintenance and repairs.
Is that something that was discovered just this year?
The HVAC systems, it was part of the report that we gave JASCOM with some of the systems that were going to be failing soon. So we did know we have been repairing them as much as possible. But this one, we've done everything we can and it's still not working. And so we want it replaced before it gets warm.
Okay, so
And it's also vital for this one to get replaced because it's what cools our IT room where our server is.
Yeah, I mean, when duct tape won't get it done, you
Yep.
move on to the next step.
$7,000 feels like a steal for HVAC.
I did do a double, like, really? Cause in my mind, I had something else.
Anytime you get those 4 letters in a row, I just assume it's.
But yeah,
I think they'll recognize that this is one portion of the entire HVAC system, but
it's
a good
one,
point.
it's one little thing of the like 4 or 5 that we have, but yes.
And the rest of the other 4 or 5 are not in optimal working condition either, so just recognizing that it is a concern of ours moving forward.
When we do those, do we have to like do an RFP for those, or do we just get 3 bids?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the threshold. And so with this one, we will need to get some written quotes for this to move forward.
Already in process.
Where did the estimate come from then? If we have one.
The estimate came from, we asked the repair people who'd actually repair and maintenance our HVACs to give us a quote, but we're also following the process to get our multiple written quotes. They kicked us off and we're using theirs at least as a basis.
When we select a vendor and move forward, we can always let you know what the final costs of the project are.
And then just a little legislative update. I highlighted some of the bills that directly impact joint animal services, whether operationally and or just from an animal welfare point of view too. So the first one is House Bill 2258, the Animal Control and Sheltering Funding Authority. This unfortunately did not make the cutoff date. And so this bill will not be moving forward this legislative session. There was some discussion about perhaps updating some of the language around it before reintroducing it next year. Any other additions to that, Shannon?
I was just gonna say that the highlight of it was there was a lot of interest across the state in a mechanism like this. And like Sarah mentioned, we have some fine tuning to do on what this looks like moving forward. But we did get some really good feedback, not only from stakeholders early on in the process, but also from the folks who implement these types of bills. And so we're gonna take all of the information that we've learned and come back with a better rendition of this moving forward.
Are we looking at like a flat dollar amount, or are we gonna be looking more like of a small percentage?
Yeah, and that's a good question. That's part of the refinement process. So as articulated, it was a flat dollar amount. And now what we're thinking is more than likely is coming back and taking a look at a district approach, which would be based on assessed valuation. So we don't know if that is the exact way we'll approach it in the future, but we are gonna take that information and see what could be a good avenue. So I guess the answer is it depends on what kind of refinement we do moving forward.
Cause the word excise kind of assumes that something was transferred from one person to another, but it doesn't have to be that, right? Like, it could possibly be just, hey, 1 basis point on whatever your assessed value is annually to be broken down to a monthly number.
And I think, and that's kind of the refinement of, hey, like a property tax, right? A more traditional like approach of taking a look at assessed value, whereas an excise tax is typically for doing something, right? To your point, maybe it is a purchase of a property, maybe it's a service that's being provided. So we're gonna kind of take a look at whether or not to go with a more traditional property tax approach.
There is also House Bill 2247, which is the veterinary client-patient relationship and telemedicine. This would establish statutory definitions and parameters around veterinarians being able to have a VCPR via telemedicine and what those parameters look like. This bill, so I did forget to mention the previous bill as well as this one is primary sponsor is Representative Parsley. And so this one does impact us in the sense when You know, and we had our discussion about access to spay neuter. And access to care last year, and how people are struggling for access to veterinary services. That is how this impacts us in that sense, offering some solutions for people who may struggle to get veterinary care otherwise. So I heard in the, you know, in testimony given and from veterinarians speaking out for this bill, talking about, you know, some of their clients are elderly and not able to get, you know, their animals into a vehicle, like get them crated into a vehicle and transported to the clinic. Other times, you know, in certain parts of Washington, we are quite rural. And so, you know, having to drive 2 to 3 hours to receive veterinary care, this would help alleviate some of that.
Who's sponsoring?
Partially.
Okay.
We also have House Bill 1904, which is prohibiting the declawing of cats. And so this one would prohibit non-therapeutic cat declawing. And by non-therapeutic, like, and by limited medical exemptions, it's medical exemptions for the cat, not the person. And so this would prohibit declawing from happening in the state of Washington. This would follow, I believe, California has put in place a declaw ban as well.
How common is that practice though?
Pretty uncommon.
Now, it was much more common early on, I think, before people realized what it actually was. And so just for those who are not familiar, when you declaw a cat, it's not necessarily removing the nail, but actually amputating off to the first knuckle. And so it is not always done appropriately, or sometimes like the better ways to do it are more expensive. You know, and it used to be that people would like, well, I don't want my couch messed up, so I'm going to do this. And I think a lot of people have moved away from that, thank goodness. And there's a lot of veterinarians who won't do it anyway at this point, but this way, it's a, you know, standard across the board that declawing would be prohibited. And from us, from a shelter standpoint, I mean, declawing of cats creates a lot of behavior and medical issues. So cats that are declawed have a hard time using the litter box because it hurts. They also will, because their initial sorts of defense is taken away from them. Usually cats that are declawed become biters. And so there's some behavioral issues that come with that because they don't feel like that they can defend themselves, so they are more likely to bite. And that does make it difficult for us to adopt animals out, cats especially, that are biting or don't use the litter box. And for cats that don't use the litter box that are declawed, it's not an option for them to become an outdoor cat or a community cat program, because again, they don't have the self-defense to take care of themselves. The last one is Senate Bill 5833, pets left in unattended motor vehicles. This prime sponsor is Senator Wagner. So this was to add additional language to last year's bill, which was the ability to, you know, protect Good Samaritans, law enforcement, and animal control officers if they broke into a car to save a, you know, child or an animal. Senator Wagner wanted to introduce that somebody could leave their vehicle running and locked if they have a pet in the vehicle. Because in the state of Washington, the law is you have to turn your vehicle off and lock it. It's part of loss prevention. And so he wanted to give exceptions to that. There was some initial part of the language that both WASPIC and we had an issue with, because the way it was originally written was tying that infraction to the status of the vehicle. And so it was basically like, well, if the car's running, you can't give them a citation. Or if you did, then the onus was on the law enforcement officer or the animal control officer to prove that they were in violation. And then that also meant that if you broke into the vehicle, there was more, the other part of that is there was some tied language to the liability being on the law enforcement or the animal control officer. If they broke that vehicle, like the onus was on them to prove that there was a violation. just making it really difficult because you could have an owner say, well, I left the car running. Did you though? Like, so the onus on us to prove that would have been much more onerous. And so Senator Wagner recognized some of that when we had a discussion. And so he did make language to change that. And to Waspick's point, they even brought up, you know, the gentleman who gave testimony said, well, I drive a 2002 Toyota Camry, like, and it blows hot air at all times. So like, just because it's running doesn't mean that it's okay for my dog to be in a car. And so we'll see where it lands. It did make it out of committee, but it does need its House of Origin vote by the 17th. And so does, 2247, so the veterinary bill as well as the DCLAW bill and this one all need to be voted out of their House of Origin by February 17th. And just a reminder, this is the JASCOM meeting schedule for 2026. There is one just slight difference. Everything does fall on the second Monday of the month except for April. There was some conflicting schedules and so we moved it to April 20th.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And so with that, we have reached the end of our agenda for today. I think that's a record. 56 minutes.
I think the number is 30 minutes.
Please don't count on these meetings being this short in the future. So if there is nothing further, then